new superintendent, but also as a parent. I'm going to go back and forth between those two roles tonight because I've sort of seen this on both ends, both from the administrative perspective, but also as a dad. And really our first job, all of us in the room, is really to be parents. That's our first job, our most important job, and certainly our careers are important, but being a dad to me is always trying to make that my number one priority. So I started off with a parent perspective, and I chose 5th grade because I had a 5th grade student last year. So looking at the first point there, in 2013, 2014, my son was a 5th grade in that year. He would have taken 3 days worth of assessments. He would have taken a science, math, and reading assessment. And the maximum number of hours that he would have spent would have been about 7.5 hours. That's not to say that's the maximum allowed. Well, my son wasn't in 5th grade in 2013-14. He was a 5th grader in 2014-2015. So with the new assessments that were used this year in the areas of math and reading, through the PARCC assessments, and then also the AR assessment that the state uses for science and social studies, you can see the difference between 2013, 2014, 2014, 2015. That's a dramatic increase. And that increase is really seen across all grade levels, whether you're talking about a 5th grade son that I have, a 7th grader, an 8th grader, a 9th grader. That's the sort of increase that as educators we face this year. I would also clarify that those numbers are just related to PARCC assessments and AR assessments. So there are many other assessments that we do as educators that provide real-time information for both our teachers and our students to make an awareness of where they are with their learning. What I'll talk about later is that these assessments, both in the past and also in the future, have always been, I have a professional colleague, he calls them an autopsy on learning. In other words, it's happening. So we can use those results going forward, but there's nothing that we can do that point in time to change the structure. Where if we give a teacher-created assessment, a formative assessment we call it, which is really a short assessment, it tells us very quickly what does the student know, what don't they know, and then we make immediate adjustments from there to impact that student's education. If they need enrichment, fantastic. If they need the information to be retaught, we do that, but it's that quick turnaround in time. The current assessment system, as it sits right now, and again, a little bit later, we'll talk about this, but we're not going to get results for a number of months, and it's really unclear when that's going to happen. And the best prediction right now is probably December. Now, it's to be expected when you have a new system, things are going to take a while. But again, we devoted a lot of instructional time to an assessment system that we're still very unclear as to when we're going to get those results back. That's a concern that every person in this room, whether you're a teacher, a parent, a student, again, we devoted a lot of instructional time, but yet we won't have the results until much later in the school year. The other point I'll mention is instruction days were impacted. And again, I'm focused just on the 2 assessment systems, PARCC for reading and math, AR, which would cover any subject area where we test science and social studies. That shows the number of days that were impacted just by those 2 assessments. So at our elementary school, we had assessments going on 12 days, just in those 2 areas. At our middle school, we were assessing 17 school days. And at the high school, we were assessing 18 school days. Now, it's not to say that my son, the 5th grader, had 12 days of assessment, but at some point in the building, we had 12 days at the elementary school where kids were taking, again, just one of those 2 tests. And again, that's 2 tests out of many that we give. But again, the focus of tonight is really talking about state-mandated tests. So again, you can see 12, 17, 18. Again, that was for this past year. If you would have go back to 2013, 2014, you'd be looking at probably those numbers being 3 or 4 days across the board. So again, point of comparison, what we were currently living under and what we lived under this year. Now, I want to paint an accurate and fair picture. So one of the great unknowns in the meetings of the district about testing, previous to testing beginning, was there was some current concern about online testing. Basically, was the system going to work? Was it going to be fair to kids? Just the system itself. Could the system and our infrastructure, technology speaking, would it work? And I can tell you it was a success. By and large, kids logged in and they completed this assessment successfully. So the system did work. A true testing system, quite honestly, happened the spring testing window, allegedly, and I don't know if this is true or not, but a cat climbed a power pole in the district, and they cut power off to our district, the high school and elementary school, during the time which we were testing. So, complete loss of power. Kids are testing. To be honest with you, I'm going to have some panic. I'm thinking, what's going to happen once we get power, or when we get power? So eventually, allegedly, the cat got off the power pole. They turned the power back on, and sure enough, computers booted up, and if a kid left off on question 12, let's say, the system brought them up to question 12, they didn't lose any of the work. So there was concern, again, about the infrastructure. Does online testing really work? Well, that was a very unexpected way of finding out if it really worked or didn't work. We used Chromebooks, we used desktop PCs, and that's not to say that every day was perfect, that we did have some glitches, primarily on our end, with a couple labs. But again, taking a major step forward for this district, there were some much larger districts, some much wealthier districts, to be quite honest, that chose to go the paper pencil route because they weren't confident in the system. Now, to get us to that point, we did invest a lot of time and quite honestly some money into making sure that this was going to work properly. Because the last thing I wanted, I couldn't control the tests, but I felt like I could control the environment in which kids took the tests. So we did devote a lot of man hours to making sure that our system, our network, the devices kids were using were appropriate and they did function, and that worked well. So that is a success, whether you like PARCC or not, or like AIR or not. The online system itself worked for us. Now that's not the case necessarily in all districts. A lot of districts had issues with testing, but again, to be fair and accurate in this presentation, for our district, the online platform worked well. I mentioned before the results. Again, a frustration that I have personally is that our teachers, our tech department, our administrators, especially our counselors, devoted countless hours in getting our kids ready for these assessments, taking the assessments. And again, I understand it's new, but at this point we're looking at probably November, December for results, and then the value-added component, the growth component of it likely won't be available until we're looking at probably January or February. So again, a frustration I have is timeliness of results. If online testing is supposed to provide that quick turnaround, at least in this year, it's not doing that. That's not to say that in the future it may not, but that's a frustration of mine. So I want to talk a little bit about community response. As I mentioned before, we had a couple of community meetings where the issue of assessment was discussed, and as a result, moving out through the course of the year, those assessments became closer to that February initiation. We saw the number of opt-outs grow substantially in our district. In rough numbers, Lorain County in general saw about 1,000 students opt out of testing, but our district, we had 325. So you can see that's approaching a third of the total number of opt-outs across the district, across the county occurred in our district as a response to parents' feelings regarding the assessments for a number of reasons. One, they didn't feel they were appropriate. One, they were concerned about the time. They were concerned about just the fact that this was sort of put on us and put on the students, specifically their students. I would like to think that we handled those requests appropriately. I will tell you it presented some challenges with our teaching staff. I would say that we did really, my focus, and there's some teachers who I don't think would support this, I really focused on, guys, we need to expose kids to the testing environment. So we're taking a test that's new, they need practice with that online environment. That was not our focus. Really tried to focus in on teaching the standards. So while there was some test prep going on a limited basis, we also committed to our parents that while that was going on, if students had opted their students out testing, we asked our teachers to give our students, those students, a different assignment. So we had some kids working on some practice tests some days. Our teachers then stepped up to the plate and created some different alternative activities for those students that were opted out. So definitely kudos to our staff for again, meeting those parental requests. I will be very honest with you right up front. If this same thing happens again next year with these numbers or different numbers, we will handle the situation the same way. Really what happened in the process, for those of you not familiar, we asked for students, or asked for parents to put in writing their wishes regarding testing, what tests they wanted their students to take or not to take, and then we did our absolute best to make sure that we followed through in those requests. And to my knowledge, we received really no complaints regarding how that system was handled. So again, that's not, to me, that's to our staff's credit to make sure that there was follow through and respected the wishes of our community in that respect. Again, if I'm being honest with you, we'll talk a little later about this, but you can see the Firelands is a small district. We're 1,800 students. So we're just getting an answer. How many students in the county total?
42,000.
42,000. So there's 42,000 students in Lorraine County, that's public school students. You can see again, 1,000 across the county opted out, we had a large percentage. So the point, and in my letter, I made it sort of the point of saying, well, why are we having this meeting now? School is over, we should be maybe focused on family and friends and some other things. But the reason for the meeting now is because in Columbus, they're making decisions about what's going to happen in the next 2 years. And so this really is our window of opportunity to make some changes and to make our voices heard about what we would like to see and not see. Hence the reason for a hot meeting in June on a high school gym talking about assessment. Also in response, and again, this is not a Lorraine County issue, it's not a Firelands phenomenon, there were opt-outs across the state. What we saw was a Center Advisory Committee that was developed to address this concern along with some other legislation. So just real briefly, what the Senate has suggested at this point in time is what you see on the overhead on the screen. So as I mentioned before, there were 2 testing administrations. Their recommendation is that it moves to 1 test administration. Their suggestion the test should be shortened and closer to the end of the school year. To address the issue of sort of what these tests are, what they're testing, they're suggesting that there be efforts made to make test questions and answers more available to the public in general. There's been some concerns about students that receive accommodation modifications through an IEP. They've asked for that issue to be addressed. But what is important, and again, we're going to respect your wishes, but what concerns me is that last bullet point. They have said that for 14-15, there's basically something called safe harbor, which means it's going to protect the district, it's going to protect kids, it's going to protect parents from any consequences of taking or not taking these assessments. But they were very clear to say that it applies to this school year, specifically last school year. That was the Senate's response. As I mentioned, the opportunity for change is now. The current status of the budget bill in Columbus is this, that right now, the House has voted to completely defund PARCC, pull all money out of PARCC. Recently, the Senate released their budget, I think it was Tuesday this week. And I'm speaking with someone in Columbus this morning. The latest on the Senate is that they have failed to or are yet to restore funding for PARCC. But behind that is this fact, that if we do absolutely no testing in this state, the state is going to lose $750 million in federal funding. So when we don't like testing, it's probably also unrealistic to think that this is what's really going to happen. Because I don't think there's a politician in Columbus that's probably going to vote to approve a loss of $750 million in federal funding. So it has to be, in my mind, and I'm sure in their minds, some ways to still capture that money. Unfortunately, we're talking about money, and we should be talking about kids. But the reality is, a politician probably is not going to go to that extent, because that is a significant loss of money for the state. That's just my personal opinion, but I think we could probably be honest and say that that's probably not going to happen. So the question is, what are we gathered here tonight to do? What is a solution moving forward? And so really, from my standpoint, I'm not afraid of accountability. Our teachers aren't afraid of accountability. I don't think our kids are afraid of accountability, but it needs to be a common sense approach. Again, I go back to what my parent had back on. A couple years ago, last year, we had in 5th grade 3 days of testing. We functioned in that capacity for many years, and there really was not an overabundance of concerns from parents. Our teachers worked within that system, and it provided us some data. And moving forward, we made some adjustments. When we look at almost doubling the amount of instructional time that we lost because of testing, in addition to the fact that our counselors, our administrators were busy running around, moving Chromebooks, addressing testing issues as opposed to addressing kid issues, and the needs of supporting teachers in the classroom and those other things, all those man hours, besides lost instructional time, also impacted how buildings ran. And that's a very fair and honest statement. One of the things that I would hope that you would consider, whatever your feeling is tonight, is that I can't emphasize enough that the time factor here is critical. That whatever happens in the next 2 months, basically by the end of June, really is going to be what's going to be put upon us for the next 2 years. So as I said before, you have my absolute word that if nothing changes from this past year to school year, and you make some decisions regarding enrolling or not enrolling your students in state assessments, we will honor those wishes. and we'll do our absolute best. It would be better for our district, to be quite honest with you, if we could make some changes, reduce the number of tests, reduce the number of hours, and so we could sort of move forward. And because honestly, we're a little bit of an outlier right now, so I don't want to be a fearmonger, but there's a potential that things could happen. I don't want to get into that because I don't know what they are. But when you see a Senate advisory committee say, well, we're going to get passed for 1 year. Well, that was 1 year. So we're good for this coming school year, but if we have a similar number, or as the word spreads, maybe that number goes up to 500, 600, 700 kids that are opting out, I'm concerned about the long-term effect it may have on our district. And again, I don't want to focus on that, but I think that is a concern that I have, to be quite honest with you. And again, I don't know what those consequences would be, but if the state is spending tens of millions of dollars on testing, it would be hard to imagine that we're just going to give districts sort of a free pass and not the test. So again, we want to support you. You absolutely will. But again, I feel like we're responsible to look out for our entire district. And again, not knowing what the results may be, that's the concern I have. So what we're asking tonight, if you have a concern, if you'd like to see action, whether it's to absolutely contact members of the House, members of the Senate, encourage family and friends across the state. This can't be, again, a Lorraine County issue. This has got to go statewide. You can certainly talk to Senator Manning. She's a supporter of public education, but she has a vote. So we need to influence as much as we can other members of the House and members of the Senate to make some real change.